Welcome to Sage Advice, the podcast where ancient wisdom meets modern science. Here we explore herbal medicine, natural health, and the fascinating ways our bodies are designed to heal and thrive. From the microbiome to medicinal plants, we'll uncover practical insights that help you understand your personal health in a whole new way. I'm Carrie Mallinger, the Herb Gal, and I am so glad you're here. So let's learn, grow, and together, let's get better. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons so you won't miss a thing. I'm starting a new series this week, but first let me ask you a question. Why is it that two people can be exposed to the same germs, experience completely different outcomes? Imagine this. Two people are sitting on the same airplane. They breathe the same air, touch the same armrests, and are exposed to the same germs during the flight. A few days later, one of them is sick in bed with a fever and body aches. The other feels perfectly fine. So what happened? For more than 100 years, modern medicine has largely answered that question with something called germ theory. The idea that microorganisms like bacteria and viruses invade the body and cause disease. And in many ways, that theory has been incredibly successful. It led to sanitation, vaccines, antibiotics, and surgical sterilization, advances that have saved millions of lives. There's always been another question quietly sitting in the background. If germs cause disease, why doesn't everyone that's exposed to the same germ get sick? Back in the 1800s, a French scientist named Antoine Beauchamp had a different perspective. Instead of focusing only on the invading microbe, he focused on the body's condition, what he called the terrain. He believed that microbes exist everywhere, inside us and around us, and that illness happens when the body's internal environment becomes weakened or imbalanced. In other words, the germ matters, but so does the soil it lands in. Think of it like a garden. That's natural for an herbalist. If the soil is rich and healthy, plants thrive and weeds struggle to take over. But when the soil becomes depleted, pests and disease appear everywhere. For more than a century, medicine focused mostly on eliminating the weeds. But today, modern science is rediscovering something fascinating. The human body is not just a collection of organs, it's an ecosystem. Inside each of us lives a vast microbial world, trillions of bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms that help regulate our digestion, our immune system, and even our mood. In fact, many scientists now say we are not just human beings, we are living ecosystems. So maybe the question isn't only how to fight germs. Maybe the deeper question is how to cultivate a body where disease has a much harder time taking root. Today, we're going to explore the fascinating story behind germ theory and terrain theory, why this debate started more than 150 years ago, and why modern microbiome research is bringing this conversation back into the spotlight. Louis Pasteur is credited with establishing germ theory, which states microorganisms cause disease, period. His work demonstrated that microbes could cause fermentation, food spoilage, and infectious disease. Pasteur's research led to pasteurization, vaccines, and sterile surgical practices. These discoveries dramatically reduced death from infection. So why did germ theory dominate? Well, it produced immediate measurable results. It worked well for acute infectious diseases, and it fit the growing industrial medical model. So medicine focused on finding and destroying pathogens. At the same time, a contemporary of Pasteur, Antoine Beauchamp, proposed something different. He believed the internal condition of the body determines disease. His research described tiny biological units that he called microzymas, or cellular dust. He proposed that microorganisms change form depending on their environment. Disease is the result of an internal imbalance, and microbes are symptoms of disease terrain, not always the cause. In his view, the microbe is nothing, the terrain is everything. Though that quote is often attributed to Pasteur later, Beauchamp's work never gained the same traction as Pasteur's. And I would be remiss if I didn't emphasize another major turning point in medicine that came in the early 1900s. The American industrialist John D. Rockefeller systematically transformed American medicine in a pharmaceutical-based business model by funding a transformation of medical education. In 1910, a report called the Flixner Report came out. The Flixner Report evaluated medical schools across the United States and Canada. Its recommendations emphasize scientific laboratory medicine, eliminate schools teaching homeopathy, herbalism, and naturopathy, standardized training around pharmaceutical and surgical approaches. And within 1 decade, over half of the medical schools closed. Many herbal traditions were pushed outside the mainstream medicine. This cemented reductionist model of disease, focusing on pathogens and targeted drugs. The report also improved medical quality dramatically, but it narrowed the definition of what medicine really is. It redefined real medicine as laboratory-based science. The Flixner Report, commissioned by the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, evaluated medical schools and concluded that legitimate medicine should be based on biology, chemistry, and pathology, taught only in universities, and grounded in laboratory science and experimentation. This shifted medicine toward a reductionist, disease-focused model rather than a holistic one. Delegitimize traditional and natural healing systems. Flexner explicitly criticized schools that taught herbal medicine, homeopathy, energetic, vitalist approaches. As a result, eclectic medical schools, which heavily used herbs, shut down completely. Homeopathic colleges were absorbed or closed, and indigenous and folk healing traditions were excluded entirely. Natural medicine wasn't necessarily ineffective. It just didn't meet the new definition of scientific. It drastically reduced the number of medical schools. After the report, nearly half of all medical schools in the country closed. Surviving schools aligned with universities, hospitals, and pharmaceutical research. This consolidation meant fewer entry points for alternative practitioners and more control over what counted as legitimate training. If you didn't train in the approved system, you weren't considered a real doctor. It aligned medicine with pharmaceuticals. The new model emphasized isolating active compounds, standardizing dosages, and developing patentable drugs. You can't patent a plant. That's a clue. It narrowed the scope from healing to disease treatment. Pre-Flexner traditions often focused on supporting the body's natural healing processes, diet, lifestyle, and prevention. Post-Flexner medicine increasingly focused on diagnosing disease and targeting specific pathology. This one shift marginalized approaches that emphasize balance, vitality, and prevention, the core principles in herbalism. Because of these changes, herbal knowledge moved out of formal institutions and into folk traditions, apprenticeships, later alternative health movements. Licensing laws reinforced the divide, and natural medicine became labeled alternative instead of mainstream. The bottom line, under the guise of improving medical education, The report redefined medicine itself. It narrowed medicine to what could be measured in the lab, what could be standardized, and what fit a biomedical model. Doing so, pushed herbal, natural medicine outside the boundaries of legitimacy, even though those transitions had been central to healing for centuries. But despite this, terrain thinking is reemerging. Several trends are bringing terrain theory back into the discussion. Chronic disease epidemic, microbiome research, functional medicine, urbanism and traditional medicine, lifestyle medicine. Many conditions today are terrain driven, including type 2 diabetes, autoimmune disease, and these are not caused by a single germ. They are systemic imbalances. So in summary, germ theory asks, what pathogen caused this disease? Terrain theory asks, why was the body vulnerable to that pathogen in the first place? Modern scientists suggest the answer is both. Disease happens when a microbe meets a susceptible terrain. So instead of only asking how to kill germs, we might also ask how to build a body where disease has a harder time taking hold. Next week, we're going to explore something truly fascinating, how the trillions of microbes living inside your gut may actually influence your metabolism, your appetite, and yes, even your body weight. Remember, the Bible says our bodies are fearfully and wonderfully made. And when we support them well, they often respond in remarkable ways. So let's get better.